Welcome back to the AI Daily Brief. It's pretty clear that the big news this week in AI was the introduction by OpenAI of a set of new reasoning models. On Wednesday, OpenAI released O3 and O4 Mini. O3 is their most advanced reasoning model to date, while O4 Mini is being pitched as a competitive trade-off between price, speed, and performance. There's also a high-resource version of O4 Mini called O4 Mini High. So the trend of OpenAI having completely clear names continues. The new batch of reasoning models introduces some new features to the O series family. First, the models can integrate images into their reasoning process. We've seen something along these lines show up as an emergent property of multimodal models like Google's Gemini, but this will be the first time that OpenAI has pushed the limits on what the reasoning modality can do. OpenAI told VentureBeat, "These models don't just see an image, they think with it. It unlocks a new class of problem solving that blends visual and textual reasoning." The other big improvement is tool use, with the new models natively trained on common tools. The company wrote, "We've trained them to use tools through reinforcement learning, teaching them not just how to use tools, but to reason about when to use them." President Greg Brockman commented, "They actually use these tools in their chain of thought as they're trying to solve a hard problem. For example, we've seen O3 use like 600 tool calls in a row trying to solve a really hard task." Now, this could represent a big jump in agentic capabilities. For agents, being able to figure out the right tools to use for any given situation is going to be one of their biggest unlocks and is pretty key to enabling ultimately fully autonomous agents. Right now, one of the most common failure states for agents is either failing to recognize when to use a tool or failing to access the tool properly. Now, it wouldn't be a new model release without a whole bunch of benchmarks that you're not exactly sure what they mean or how much to care about. And in fact, the tool use appears to be showing up here. O4 Mini, for example, managed to score 99.5% on the AIME 2025 mathematics competition, but only when given access to a Python interpreter. More broadly, OpenAI is claiming that O3 benchmarks as state-of-the-art across standard coding, science, and agentic tasks. However, as you will have heard me say before, I think that given the challenges of benchmarks, it's much more relevant to see what people are actually doing with these tools. Kelsey Piper of Vox's Future Perfect said that O4 Mini High is the first model to pass her own, quote, personal secret benchmark for hallucinations and complex reasoning. Her test involves presenting the inputs of a complex mid-game chessboard and the prompt, mate in one. The catch is that there is no checkmate in one move. AI models are trained on extensive chess puzzles of this kind, but their training set doesn't necessarily include this kind of trick question. Piper said that her prior testing showed that models reason through thousands of possibilities before hallucinating a solution. This generally involves adding extra pieces to the board or illegal moves. The models will then add lengthy justifications for why their hallucinated solution is correct. She had run this test on every Claude model to date, as well as Gemini 2.5 Pro, GPT-O3 Mini High, and Grok 3, with none figuring out that the solution is impossible. Why is this a big deal? I invented this problem because I think it gets at the core of AI's potential and limitations. An AI that can't question its premises will always be limited. An AI that doubles down on its own wrong answers will too. She noted that the reasoning trace was 8 minutes long, much longer than any other query she ran, saying, "That's a lot of places to potentially make mistakes and hallucinate a solution." Its expectation that there was a solution was very strong, but it overcame it. She added in conclusion, however, "That said, its explanation of why there was no checkmate in fact still contains some chess inaccuracies, which I know it knows better than. So certainly don't trust these things, but know they're continually getting better." An even more vociferous endorsement came from economist Tyler Cowen, who wrote, "I think it's AGI. Seriously. Try asking it lots of questions and then ask yourself, just how much smarter was I expecting AGI to be? I've argued in the past AGI, however you define it, is not much of a social event per se. It will still take us a long time to use it properly. Benchmarks, blah, blah, blah. Maybe AGI is like porn. I know it when I see it, and I've seen it." Now, I haven't had as many reps as I normally would have this week with O3 given the travel, but I am absolutely 100% in the Tyler Cowen camp here. Not necessarily that O3 is AGI, but that it doesn't matter. These models have so far, to me, been an absolute step change improvement relative to O1 and what we were using in the past. I've been testing them as a business thought partner, and the reasoning is so much more thorough, so much more interesting, and just generally better. In fact, I've implored, by which I mean basically demanded, that everyone inside Superintelligent start playing around with O3 as a brainstorming partner for pretty much everything. I genuinely think it's that good. Now, I think it'll still take some time for us to figure out exactly what the best use cases for these models are. Although if enough people like me demand that all their colleagues use it for every business interaction from here on out, I'm sure we'll figure it out more quickly. Still, one use case that people jumped on very fast was that O3 appears to be disturbingly good at geoguessing. Given basically any photo of a landscape or a building, the model can pinpoint its location on a map. Henry on X wrote, 10 years ago, the CIA would have gotten on their knees for this. Every single human has just been handed an intelligence superweapon. It's only getting stranger. I would implore you, if you haven't had a chance yet, go play with this model. Even if you don't have something specific that you're trying to do, try asking it whatever business question you're thinking through at the moment. Use it as a thought and collaboration partner and just see how different it feels as opposed to past models. It is, of course, totally possible that I'm in the few first day glow of a new toy and that it's actually not all that different, but I kind of don't think so. Now, completely overshadowed by the O3 and O4 mini releases, OpenAI also rolled out a new update to their non-reasoning model family earlier in the week on Monday. GPT 4.1 will be the successor to GPT 4.0 and is now available to developers through the API. The GPT 4.1 family includes 3 different sizes with a mini and nano variant available alongside the full-size model. OpenAI says that the nano version will be their smallest, fastest, and cheapest model yet. Another big update, the models have a 1,000,000 token context window matching Google's recently released Gemini 2.5 Pro. As we've discussed before, ultra-long context windows are especially important for coding assistants and agents, allowing users to dump entire code bases into the model or run longer agentic workflows. And it seems that GPT 4.1 is explicitly aimed at coding use cases. An OpenAI spokesperson said, "We've optimized GPT 4.1 for real-world use based on direct feedback to improve in areas that developers care most about. Front-end coding, making fewer extraneous edits, following formats reliably, adhering to response structure and ordering, consistent tool usage, and more. These improvements enable developers to build agents that are considerably better at real-world software engineering tasks." If nothing else, this is definitely OpenAI competing on price in a very aggressive way. Michelle Pokras, the post-training research lead at OpenAI, said, "Not all tasks need the most intelligence or top capabilities. Nano is going to be a workhorse model for cases like autocomplete, classification, data extraction, or anything else where speed is the top concern." Entrepreneur Paul Gauthier noted that this week's releases are more than the sum of their parts, posting, "Using O3 High as architect and GPT 4.1 as editor produced a new state-of-the-art of 83% on the Aider polyglot coding benchmark. It also substantially reduced costs compared to O3 High alone." Now, speaking of coding, something we've talked a lot about on this show is how for some time, Anthropic's Claude has been the go-to choice for developers. Well, OpenAI is definitely not giving up that fight, because alongside these new models, they also rolled out a new coding agent. Sam Altman posted, "O3 and O4 mini are super good at coding, so we're releasing a new product, Codex CLI, to make them easier to use. This is a coding agent that runs on your computer. It's fully open source and available today. We expect it to rapidly improve." Now, because it's open source, of course, there are already forks that enable models from outside the OpenAI ecosystem as well. First reactions seem decent. Gooby said, "Used Codex CLI with O3. Used like 150 in tokens in like an hour. Switching to O4 mini now, LMAO. That being said, O3 was cooking. Fixed a couple of long-standing bugs." Rashab Shrivastava wrote, "Vibes for Codex CLI so far? Been a bit meh for me. Claude Code's still much better. Codex with O4 mini has been fantastic for one-shot single-file edits, extremely good at fixing subtle bugs when specifically prompted. Meh at iteration and retaining content and at multi-file edits. Terrible at creating documentation and explaining a code base." So for now, maybe Claude can breathe a sigh of relief, but it's pretty clear that OpenAI wants to compete in that space, which is also validated by the fact that on Wednesday, Bloomberg reported that the company is looking to acquire Windsurf. Windsurf is probably the best-known Cursor competitor and was valued at $1.25 billion back in August and was reportedly in talks to raise at a $3 billion valuation earlier this year. The reports state that OpenAI is looking to make the acquisition at $3 billion, but sources say the deal hasn't been finalized and could still fall apart. Now, if you're wondering why not just buy Cursor instead, Sam Altman apparently thought of that as well and made 2 separate attempts to buy the leading agentic coding platform. One was late last year and another early this year. In fact, CNBC sources say that OpenAI has actually met with 20 companies in the AI coding domain before reportedly finding a deal with Windsurf. All in all, it was an extremely busy week in OpenAI land, and I'm ignoring about a half a dozen stories that otherwise might have merited attention. For now, what I will leave you with is my strong instinct to please go try O3, play around with O4 mini as well. These really do feel like a different quality of model and a different quality of experience, and I think are going to open up some different types of use cases. For now, though, that's going to do it for today's AI Daily Brief. Until next time, peace